When I was a kid, I dreamed of one day working for Google. Back then, it wasn't because of the money. I was 10 years old and I couldn't care less about my finances. I wanted to work for Google because they had a cool looking office with a slide to get from one floor to the next. As I got older, I realized that Google also paid employees really well on top of providing benefits that couldn't be matched. Free laundry, an on-site gym, and free food sounded too good to be true. Realistically, at that point, I could just live out of a van in a parking lot and save a bunch of money so I could retire early.
Just out here living in this van.
What? No, I'm not living in a van. If I ever got a job at Google, then I would live in a van. Anyway, another reason I wanted to work for Google as I got older was for the bragging rights that would come with the job. After you have Google on your resume, no one is going to think twice about interviewing you. It's basically a foot in the door to any company you'd ever want to work for. What's up, everyone? My name is Cody Engel, and I don't work at Google. I don't even work for a FAANG company, and I stopped wasting my time trying to work for the big 5 tech bros years ago. In this video, you're going to learn why you should stop wasting your time with FAANG right after you smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. If you have ever spent 5 minutes on the CS Career Questions subreddit, you are probably familiar with how fixated everyone is with working for FAANG. FAANG was coined by Jim Cramer back in 2013 as a way to help investors remember which tech companies to invest in. He has since created a new acronym known as MAMA, but that's really beside the point. Jim Cramer doesn't know a thing about being a software engineer, and it makes no sense to base a career decision off of an acronym that a mediocre investor put together in an afternoon. FAANG represents some of the largest tech companies, and back in 2013, they also had excellent potential for growth. Fast forward to 2022, and you should ask yourself if those companies can continue to grow and push into $3 or $4 trillion market caps. Big tech companies can afford to pay amazing benefits. Of course, not all of them do. Amazon is historically stingy with their benefits, only offering free bananas and discard front doors for office desks. FAANG companies can also afford to pay some of the highest salaries on the market. Of course, Netflix has recently been eclipsed by LinkedIn, and Stripe has been paying incredibly high salaries for years now, so they aren't the only ones. But still, if you didn't want to do a lot of research and simply wanted to work somewhere that was definitely going to be good, then you could just interview for all of the FAANG companies, and if you got an offer, you'd know for sure that you're at one of the best companies in the world, right?
Wrong.
Big tech companies are, well, big. That means there are only so many high-profile projects that can be worked on. Not everyone gets to work on Google's search engine or Facebook's newsfeed. In fact, even if you worked on Facebook's newsfeed, you would likely only work on one smaller portion of that overall product. You could potentially spend your entire tenure with the company having only worked on a single type of post, or maybe just those reaction emojis. Sure, working on that small piece of the newsfeed still has the potential to impact millions or billions of users, but does that really matter? Do you want to spend your time optimizing and optimizing and optimizing, or do you want to build something?
You want to build something.
If you want to spend your time building a lot of different features and potentially entire products, then big tech is going to be a big letdown. You'll have a much better time working for a smaller company where you can have an impact on an entire set of features along with an easier interview process. Even if you do get a chance to work on a high-profile feature, at least some amount of the technology you use will be proprietary. Google doesn't even use Git. They instead have their own version control system called Piper. This system makes it possible to access over 2 billion lines of code from a single mono repo. Of course, that would take a great deal of space on your machine, so Piper doesn't actually pull every single line of code down. Instead, it will fetch code on an as-needed basis, but you won't have to think too much about that implementation detail. These companies can afford to have entire departments on payroll dedicated to developer productivity. We're not just talking about regular DevOps roles either. We're talking about entire teams that will build brand new internal tools just to make engineers within the company slightly more productive. There is still the chance that you might get to work with some third-party products. However, chances are good you'll be working with a lot of proprietary tools that are only relevant to your current company. You may also be surprised to learn that not everyone working at FAANG is a brilliant software engineer that is solving LeetCode hard problems every morning before they shower. Actually, you may run into some number of coworkers that don't even shower at all. Regardless of personal hygiene, you'll definitely end up running into your fair share of coasters participating in the practice known as
Rest and vest.
The reason why this happens is because a large amount of compensation at FAANG is from stock grants. These grants tend to vest over a period period of 3 to 4 years with annual refreshers, which then vest over another 3 to 4 years. To further complicate the matter, companies will also provide discretionary equity to top performers as a way of keeping them at the company. Those special stock grants will also vest over a period of several years, and given they are often worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, most recipients will not be inclined to leave. Since the individual scope of work is often smaller for larger companies, it becomes easier and easier to coast and put in the minimum amount of effort required to keep your job. So, even though you may have all the ambition in the world, you may end up with some coworkers that couldn't care less. Some may even work a second or third job on the side. This can be incredibly demotivating and frustrating. Oh, and I should mention that FAANG tends to acquire their fair share of startups. The employees at those startups will generally get very generous buyout packages in the form of newly issued stock grants. Depending on the acquisition, those new employees could have compensation packages worth millions of dollars, providing they stay around long enough for the equity to vest. That's not to say you're going to work with a bunch of slackers, but given how difficult the interviews can be, it might be a shock to learn that everyone isn't as motivated as you might be. Speaking of which, the interviews can be absolutely brutal at these FAANG companies. Every time I've interviewed with Google, they have sent me prep materials that would likely take me several months to get through. I graduated from college almost a decade ago, and since then, I haven't gotten any more excited to study for hours on end. In the case of Google, I've never really taken the time to truly prepare. This has resulted in me failing the on-site interviews, sometimes in spectacular fashion. If you want to work at FAANG, then you really need to ask yourself, do you want to put in around 360 hours to prepare? You'll almost certainly want to pay for LeetCode Premium, which is around $40 per month. From there, you'd spend the next 3 to 4 months grinding away at those problems for 3 to 4 hours per day without any days off. By the time you are ready to interview, you should be able to answer LeetCode hard questions within 45 minutes, and medium questions should be a quick 15-minute exercise. Even after all that preparation, it will still come down to some amount of luck. Google has even said they would much rather turn away a qualified candidate because the interview panel messed up, as opposed to allowing some normie to get in and lower the company's collective IQ. I was nowhere close to getting an offer from Google.
Idiot!
But during on-sites, I've experienced a wide variety of interviewers. Some are happy to talk through the problem and even offer some tips when you get stuck. Others will simply stare at you and wait for you to solve the problem, and if you don't, they may respond simply by saying, "You need to do more LeetCode." Let's assume you do get past the on-site though. For some FAANG companies, that's the last step, while others like Google will then send your packet off to hiring managers. If none of the hiring managers are interested in your packet, then you'll be rejected just like the rest. Fear not though, you can always interview again in 1 year. All of this is to say that in order to get a job at a FAANG company, you will need to prepare much more than you would for other companies. When I'm interviewing, I tend to brush up a little on LeetCode, and that's really it. I already feel comfortable with system design and other practical real-world questions, so I don't practice those. The time commitment for me is usually around 1 week for a couple hours per day, which is fairly easy to manage. For FAANG, I'd need to dedicate 2 or 3 months of my life to practice LeetCode problems. All of that is to give myself the best chance of crushing the interview. If I don't get a job offer, then I've essentially wasted 2 or 3 months of my life, which for me doesn't feel worth it. So you should really ask yourself if the time necessary to prepare will be worth it for you. If the main reason you are looking to work for a FAANG company is the money, then you should know that you have other options available. That is because this year's top paying tech companies aren't FAANG. Facebook doesn't even show up on the list until you get to staff software engineer. For Google, they only made the list for principal software engineers. If you want to know which companies did make the list and at what level, then check out this video I made right now. If you find yourself wanting to chat with others in the community, then check out our link to our Discord community in the description below. That's it. That's the video.